Helsinki, capital of Norway, in the 15th modern Olympic Games. Merv Wood led the Australian team in the parade of 4,925 athletes from 69 countries. The Duke of Edinburgh and the Duke of Kent were in the royal box to watch the women's 200 metres. In the semi-final, Marjorie Jackson had created a new world record of 23.4 seconds and was a hot favourite for the final. The Lithgow Flash made no mistake. From the inside track, she mowed them down and coasted to a 5 yards victory. At the London Olympics, Shirley Strickland had run third to the famous Fanny Blankers-Koen in the 80 metres hurdles. Now, 4 years later, they meet again. The Dutch girl hits a hurdle and Shirley strides out to clock 10.9. Another world record and a third gold medal for Australia. The final of the 100 metres. Australia has two starters, Shirley Strickland and Marjorie Jackson. But the Lithgow Flash, joint holder of the world record for 100 yards, proves conclusively that she's the fastest woman in the world and goes on to a comfortable win from South Africa's Daphne Happenjager and the versatile Shirley Strickland surging into third place. For Marjorie Jackson, a second gold medal. No wonder the western New South Wales city of Lithgow went wild when their Marjorie returned home with her 2 gold medals for the coveted sprint double. At the city outskirts, she received congratulations from the civic fathers and a bouquet from the Lady Mayoress. Then into an open car for the triumphal ride through a crowd of more than 20,000. Marjorie had never moved so slowly in her life. An unforgettable day, not only for Marjorie Jackson, but for the city of Lithgow. Whereas Marjorie was back among lifelong friends, this aircraft brought to Melbourne a young woman to start a new life among new friends. The Parker family of Ringwood gathered at Essendon to welcome home Gordon, a former member of the occupation force in Japan, and his wife Cherry, the first Japanese bride admitted to Australia, with their 2 daughters, Margaret and Kathleen. East is east and west is west, and this was one occasion the twain did meet. More than 3,000 well-wishers crammed vantage points outside a Toorak church for the wedding of tennis idol Frank Sedgman. Although jostled by the hysterical crowd, the bride kept smiling, while Frank waited inside for his new partner, radiant Jean Spence, daughter of a well-known professional golfer. A real love set for a new doubles team, Mr. and Mrs. Frank Sedgman. And from a mixed double, we pass to a set of singles, the photographer's ball, and the parade of finalists competing for Model of the Year. This is Valerie May. Loretta North, famous as Miss Kangaroo. In bold checks is Pat Woodley, a former Miss New South Wales. Photographer John Herder talks with Shirley Berger. But Model of the Year is 20-year-old Valerie May, and it was doubly exciting for Val. Not only did she receive a cup, but also an engagement ring. In Sydney at the same time was world-famous Danish milliner Arge Tarup to propound his theory that a hat should be modelled to suit the individual. June Mallet needed only a flower to set off her brunette beauty. Take one blonde, one chic hat, a massive veiling and a deft touch born of more than 20 years' experience designing for royalty, and the master producer's je ne sais quoi. Arger approves the way June Dally Watkins wears one of his black and white creations, which suggests that once again, everything is rosy in Denmark. But at Upper Hutt near Wellington, New Zealand, hats were conspicuous by their absence when Maori ladies from Carterton met the hometown Debs. It was a case of applying bargain sale tactics to rugby. You can just imagine the gossip that went on when they got their heads together in the scrum. Ah, the belle with the ball makes a bolt for the line. There's no stopping Miss Amazon on her way to the try line. But sad days were to come. Outside Buckingham Palace, crowds gathered in fearful silence with the news of a breakdown in the health of King George VI. For days and nights, the vigil was maintained. And then came the end, sudden but peaceful. A nation mourned the passing of a beloved monarch who, after the abdication of his elder brother Edward in 1936, had reigned through 15 of the most troublesome years of the world's history. The man who, as the sailor Prince Albert, Duke of York, had opened Parliament House in Canberra just 25 years previously in 1927. William Morris Hughes, father of the Federal Parliament, the grand old man of Australian politics, also passed on. As Prime Minister during World War I, though he failed to impose conscription, never wavered in his battle to ease the task of our men overseas. He visited the front in France, and upon his return to Australia in 1919, was hailed as a hero and named the Little Digger. He was a member of the House of Representatives for more than 50 years, from Federation until he died on October 28, 1952, in his 89th year. A dominant figure for so long and through so many changes of political fortune, Billy Hughes became in his lifetime a legend. A legend that possibly owed more to the stories of what he said rather than to the record of what he did. Outlasting all his contemporaries of the days of Federation, he lived halfway into the 20th century as a picturesque survivor of the first days of Australian nationhood. To many, he was impossible. He had employed more than 100 private secretaries. But when at last that rasping voice was stilled, tributes came from all over the world. More than 2,000 wreaths, including one from Winston Churchill. The little man with the flailing arms, the snappy sentences, and the theatrical hesitations. Billy Hughes, the Little Digger. Yet another day of honoring the dead was in Brisbane, where a striking war memorial was unveiled at the spot where the first American troops arrived in Australia in December 1941. Official guest for Coral Sea Week was distinguished United States Army General Eichelberger, well known to Aussie troops who fought alongside the Americans at Buna. To Australia's General Sir John Laverack fell the honour of unveiling the plaque on the monument. General Eichelberger had this to say.
They passed this way, and some went home to join their families, and some died on that long road back. And so many times when they died alongside of the men of Australia.
A monument and two flags, emblems of unity between two nations. At St Andrew's Cathedral in Sydney, the dead of two world wars were remembered on an April Sunday in a brief and simple Anzac service. Archbishop Mole led a procession of dignitaries to the Field of Remembrance, a small plot in the cathedral grounds. The Governor-General, Sir William McKell, planted the first of hundreds of tiny crosses. After Anzac Day, the crosses were burned and ashes scattered over the plot, a solemn ceremony repeated each year since. 3,000 dockyard workers and visitors gathered at Cockatoo Island for the launching of HMAS Voyager, a tribal-class destroyer and the first prefabricated and all-welded ship ever built in an Australian shipyard. Dame Patty Menzies smashed the traditional bottle of champagne on Voyager's bow to launch her on a peacetime career of 12 years, destined to end tragically on the night of February the 10th, 1964, when, during night flying maneuvers, 82 of her crew perished as the aircraft carrier HMAS Melbourne cut her in half off Jarvis Bay. Few Australians had ever heard of the Montebello Islands in 1952 until the news leaked out that for 2 years the British government had been preparing for its first atomic weapon test at this lonely spot off the West Australian coast. The plan was to explode an atom bomb aboard an old frigate to develop protection for British and Australian ports from such an attack. Top scientists installed a vast array of delicate equipment to record the effect of the blast. October 3rd, aboard the flagship HMS Campania, the countdown began. Final seconds of a $200 million project. Detailed results of the blast were not made public. Just a terse announcement that the test had been successful, together with the reassuring news for Australians that the most stringent precautions against any ill effects from the fallout had proved more than adequate. Though this explosion was one of the main topics of conversation throughout Australia, particularly among students and scientists, there was one man who was unmoved by the historic blast. After 23 years in England, Adelaide-born Professor Marcus Oliphant is honoured at Sydney University, following his appointment as Director of the Research School of Physical Sciences at the National University in Canberra. Sir John Northcote and millionaire British philanthropist Lord Nuffield are among those who pay tribute to the man who, although a world authority on atomic energy, was unswerving in his opposition to its use in weapons of war. The biggest investiture for many years at Government House in Melbourne, the Governor-General Sir William McKell confers 130 honours and decorations. Among 17 knights to receive the accolade, Lieutenant General Sir Stanley Savage and Vice Admiral Sir John Collins. Walter Lindrum, the greatest billiard player ever, and Mr. Tennis Harry Hopman receive the MBE. Another sporting hero, Jimmy Carruthers, returns from Johannesburg with the world bantamweight belt, which he took from South Africa's Vic Tawil by a first-round knockout. With his wife, Myra, Jimmy, the first Australian boxer to hold a world title, is greeted by his manager, Dr. John McGurr. Friends, relatives, and the public add their welcome as the new champ shapes up to the microphones.
Well, Australia, I'm pleased and proud to be the first Australian ever to fight and win the world's title. And we've been away from home a long time, and I hope that we can hold the title in Australia for many, many years to come.
Here's another boxing champion, Dave Sands, the casino-born Aborigine whom every Australian fan believed was about to become our second world title holder, but whom fate had declared was about to die in a truck smash near Dungog. Let's study the style of the brilliant boxer who hit the headlines just after World War II by winning the Australian heavy, light heavy and middleweight titles. He went to England in 1949 to take the Empire Middleweight Championship from Dick Turpin by a first-round KO. Twice he defeated Carl Bovo Olsen, who later was to wear the world middleweight belt. Dave Sands, a potential world champion who never failed to pack the Sydney Stadium. In the same ring in Sydney in which Carruthers and Sands had proved their class in genuine fights, masters of the art of grunting and groaning were back. Vaudevillians of the mat, Negro Jim Mitchell and Bob McCune came to halt with Mitchell's shaven head slipping through headlocks like a skeleton key. McCune uses the corner post to daze Mitchell, who momentarily dreams of being back in old New Orleans. And then McCune, whose muscles once earned him the title of Mr. America, weakens Mitchell with jolting headlocks. You wouldn't see better drop kicks on a football field. Poor old Baldy Mitch. He's a pushover for a body press, and it's a fall to Muscle Man McCune. What happened at Montebello occurs annually at the Warwick Rodeo in Queensland, where every bronco is a miniature atomic bomb. They emerge with a blinding flash and produce a decent dust cloud. Observers keep at a safe distance to escape the radiation of flying hooves. These are dangerous experiments. There's the contamination from the fallout, which follows the mushroom of dust as the seat of the pants hits the base of the bomb. As a matter of fact, victims of this rodeo-active arena have suffered for days afterwards. In place of dust and dirt, these surfboat crews prefer an arena of waves and foam. At Freshwater Beach near Sydney, these dramatic shots give some idea just how tough Australian lifesavers really are. They welcome a tussle with mountainous seas in practice runs to prepare them for rescues in any conditions. They battle their way out in make-believe rescues and start the return trip. But this day, it took the boys all their time to rescue themselves. Yes, it's back-breaking work, fraught with danger. Watch this collision. And believe it or not, no one was injured. Introducing touring American trick golfer Paul Hahn, who showed at Castle Hill Country Club, Sydney, that he can be a one-man twosome anytime he likes. Hahn abandoned the tough tournament trail to concentrate on trick shot tours around the world. It looks so easy, but this colourful visitor spent many hours every day in private, maintaining the unbelievable standard of precise timing. And this is a new twist to a 4-ball with a catch. Finally, a variation of the William Tell act. Uh-oh, no time to take a divot. Well, all's well that ends well. Both the teeth and the tee are intact. Flemington Racecourse once again bulged at the seams for the Melbourne Cup. Not everybody arrived on foot. Among those who joined the band of hopeful punters was the inimitable Jack Davy. We'll let Jack tell the story.
To give those bookmakers a hiding. It's easy. D for Davy, D for Dalray. This looks a certainty. A man might crack it for enough for a new hat. Punters are really on their toes. Or somebody else's. Welcome Sun, 4 from the rails, is now showing up to take the lead. But watch Dalray with white bandages finishing like a shot out of a gun. It's a battle royal between the New Zealand topweight and the 200-to-1 shot Welkin Sun. Although Williamson has to check him, champion Dalray's just too good. Look at the hoops of Reform, flying into third place. Taking a fortune from the ring, Dalray is hailed as a worthy successor to Far Lap. And Williamson looks unconcerned over his first Melbourne Cup win. Less discerning punters drive mournfully home. But thanks to Dalray, Davy, Jack's the crackpot.
Early in 1952, Whale Industries Limited was registered in Queensland to operate from a shore base at Tangalooma on Moreton Island, 32 miles from Brisbane. 3 Norwegian-built and manned chasers, restricted by federal law to a quota, set about intercepting the humpbacks with explosive-headed harpoon guns as the 40-footers made their annual 5 miles an hour way to northern waters from Antarctica to breed and mate. The first Tangalooma kill was on June 2nd, and that season's catch was worth $800,000. In all, that year, 4 Australian coastal stations took 1,787 whales, yielding many tons of oil, plus meal and solubles, which added valuable diet requirements to the cattle, poultry and pig industries. These monsters die hard, and the wise whaler waits until the tail stops swishing before injecting compressed air to keep the whale afloat until it can be hauled onto the fencing deck. Sweeping through the Lachlan, Murrumbidgee and Macquarie River systems of New South Wales, floodwaters wrought havoc during the winter of 1952, with the town of Forbes receiving the full force of the watery onslaught. It was the 10th time within 2 years Forbes had been floodbound, and on this occasion the river level reached 35 feet 3 inches, 5 inches above the previous record height set back in 1870. More than 900 families in the Forbes district were evacuated from their homes by aircraft, boats and army ducks. As well as rescuing victims, planes flew in food, medical supplies, doctors and nurses to those isolated on the many islands. Air Force helicopters played a major role. One whirlybird rescued 27 people from rooftops in one day as a 20 miles an hour torrent swept down the main street of Forbes. Many families were marooned for 24 hours. 2 youths were given up for dead until an army duck found them in a treetop where they'd huddled together for 2 days and 2 nights. Though no lives were lost, damage was in the vicinity of $25 million. What a pity this excess water could not have been piped down to Victoria, where the State Rivers and Water Supply Commission was forging ahead with an elaborate plan to increase the capacity of the Eildon Weir 8-fold. This involved the construction of the big Eildon Dam, a short way downstream from the weir. A 2,300 feet rock-filled embankment with a reinforced concrete core and a 700-foot spillway to control the runoff from a 1,500 square mile catchment area around the Goulburn River. But completion of the project was delayed 2 years when government funds ran short and 750 construction men suddenly found themselves out of work. Many of them moved out of the mushroom township with their wives and families, some never to return. It became a ghost town, with millions of dollars worth of the heaviest earth-moving equipment in Australia lying idle for many months. It was 1956 before the job was completed. Eildon, in those days the largest dam in Australia. Australian agriculture, already highly mechanized, added the aeroplane to the vast range of farm tools in use. In no time, the planes were seeding, dusting, spraying, top dressing and fertilizing. The paddocks of the famous Merivale Merino stud near Yass in western New South Wales were fed with superphosphate, much to the discomfort of the superfine fleeced flocks. The idea quickly spread throughout the continent, and by 1965, in West Australia, 15 companies with 40 aircraft were aerial farming over 1 million acres a year, more than twice the coverage of New South Wales, where the scheme originated. Whereas everything was being done to increase the sheep flocks, a population explosion in the kangaroo community had graziers hopping mad. With an appetite 6 times that of a sheep, Kanga was making huge holes in the pastoral profits and fences. To combat the menace, government licenses were issued to professional shooters, and the hunt was on. One marksman near Burke was credited with 3,600 in a 9,000-acre paddock in 12 weeks. Yet there was no great decrease in numbers noticeable. Some shooters were earning $200 a week. An export of 878,152 kangaroo skins that year boosted the national income by just on $1,100,000. But this windfall in New South Wales quickly faded into insignificance as cattlemen went to the wall across the northern sector of the continent. Due to the failure of the monsoonal rains in 1951, a large part of the Northern Territory was smitten by one of the worst droughts in history. The devastating effect spread to the Kimberleys in West Australia and to West Queensland, where not since 1902 had water been so scarce. More than 200,000 head of cattle were lost in the Gulf country of Queensland. The state beef herds were reduced by more than 500,000. Hardest hit area was 64,000 square miles at Upper Burnett, Dawson, Callide and the Central Tablelands. From the Kimberleys, attempts were made to drive the mobs to central Queensland for adjustment. But owing to the failure of feed and water along the stock routes, by the middle of the year, even this desperate expedient became impracticable. Waterholes had become mud traps, and drovers expended thousands of rounds of ammunition, mercifully putting an end to the futile struggles of the bogged animals. On the Barclay tablelands, over 1 million beasts worth at least $50 million succumbed to the pitiless ravages of thirst and hunger. And although the rains came in March the following year, it was more than 5 years before the cattle breeding industry in northern Australia recovered from the terrible blow delivered by drought In 1952, a year to remember.